And we're live. Woohoo!
Hi, Tim. Hi, Wade. Hi, everyone. Happy, what day is this? Wednesday?
It's Wednesday. I feel a little bit out of place in that I'm the only person who's not using the phone today.
I know. And Wade, is it snowing where you are? You're in Chicago. Is it snowing?
It stopped snowing, but it's raining a little bit, so everything's so slippery.
Oh my goodness. You're in the windy city where it absolutely is the coldest I've ever experienced in my entire life. So
Right. So you came about because of a conversation on Facebook, and you quite convincingly pitched yourself as both a mortician and a filmmaker, and I think there was an element of wrestling in there somewhere. I wasn't quite sure what the wrestling part is. So, but anybody who doesn't know you and is interested in what you do, just describe broadly, like, how did you become a mortician, and how does the filmmaking and wrestling and other stuff fit into that big pattern?
Oh, sure. So coming up as a little child, right, I said I was going to do two things. I wanted to be a filmmaker and I wanted to be a funeral director. So around the time I went to high school, like, being there, I was like in art club and I wrestled in high school. But then my senior year, my teacher connected me with a funeral home.
Yeah.
So that kind of set me up on the path right there. So I started working in the funeral business in high school. And then next thing you know, 13 years later, I was still working with them. But, but somewhere in between that time, I actually ended up going to school to be a mortician. And so right after I went to school to be a mortician, I went right to school again to be a filmmaker. So, just that's kind of what got me started.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have to ask, do the two ever meet as an art form at all? I mean, do you film anything about icy dead people or anything?
Well, the thing about it is I keep them separate, but to be honest, film is like a part of everything now, I mean, especially with marketing and things of that nature. So, I mean, I kind of can see how the two work together now because, like, during COVID, right, in some states, they had it where only like 10 people could attend the funeral service. So, I mean, a lot of people started incorporating, like, live streaming and all that into it.
Yeah. So, for anybody who is freaked out by death, and morticians and funeral homes and the rest of it, what would you say are, like, what makes you a good mortician or a good funeral home director? And, like,
That's actually a great question.
Yeah. And, well, just answer, yeah. What makes you such a great mortician?
I would say, first of all, your compassion for it, because it is a job, but I think that, you have to treat it like passion because you're dealing with people at a vulnerable time. And I mean that to me, like, I think, it's really good to be sincere, like, mean what you say what you mean, and just be genuine with it, I think the thing is, like, to kind of take yourself out of it and just, help the family through whatever they want, and just try to point them in the right direction. And, don't take advantage of people, but, like, let people tell you because they tell you what they want, So I look at it that, for me, I would say that, like, it's something that you really have to have in your heart to do because, like, it's not an easy job. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
That's not one of those type of businesses where you're having to rub day. You want to work because you're dealing with people in their life. So I think compassion.
Wade, we're losing you a tiny bit. But if you can, I think we're getting you back now. We're losing you a tiny bit. I think it might be windy. It might be windy in your city. I don't know.
Can you see me here now?
We can hear you now.
Yeah.
Okay.
You made some interesting points, and I want to kind of piggyback off of that because, like, you're with people at their worst possible moment, and I wonder, do you find yourself in the role of counselor, pastor, tell us about this a little bit and maybe what lessons you've learned from this.
I've learned a lot. I mean, in that business, you wear many hats because there were times where I had to be the singer. There were times where I had to be the minister, the media guy. So, I mean, it's like, you play many roles, and it's like a lot of times you don't never know what role you're going to play because, on those type of occasions, things happen, people don't show up or somebody's late. And, it's just one of those things where you got to be prepared for anything. You may have to be security sometimes. I mean, it all just depends,
So,
yeah.
What are some of the weirdest requests you've had in terms of preparing a funeral service? And what are the most memorable requests? So, like, because people don't just have normal services anymore. Sometimes they have very strange stuff happen.
Well, there was one particular time where I had never seen this before, but there was one family, like, one part was Jehovah's Witness, the other part was Buddhist. So they had like a Jehovah's Witness and Buddhist service mixed together. I thought that was really interesting because I've never seen it done like that before. But there was another time where I don't know how this happened, but we had a service for like 3 people. They were like in these blues bands. They were 3 separate people, but all of them had like blues. Like they had like these blues bands coming and playing music. It was really different, It was unique. I never forget that day because I'm like, it's not too often that you have like everybody that like passed kind of comes with the same background. I thought that was really interesting.
Wow, that's cool. Let's talk about your filmmaking. What are you doing with this? Where can we watch us? Tell us the scoop about your filmmaking. I clicked on one of your videos and I kind of watched a little bit. So tell us about this, everything about it, your passion, all of it.
This is where you can see some of his stuff.
Yep, you can find me on Vimeo, Wave Filmmaker 777 on Vimeo. So Wave Filmmaker 37 on Vimeo. But in the meantime, growing up as a child, right, I was like a very big Walt Disney fan, Spike Lee fan. Like I was very impressed with their movies. So like when I went to film school, I started like meeting different people and stuff and kind of, learned a few tricks of the trade. But in the meantime, it's like, I'm like, everybody's life is a story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like it has a beginning, has a middle, has an end. And I feel like all of us are like characters in our own story. And then we play supporting roles in other people's life. So basically, like with filmmaking, right, I kind of took my inspiration from that. But I'm very big about like writing about love, romance. But I mean, when I write about love, right, it's not just from a romantic perspective. Though, like, love is like a very big concept that I'm a fan of. And like I look at the world and there's a lot going on. So I like to, promote things that are good and, just encourage, me, myself, and whoever else. Like love is like really essential. So to me, I love like telling stories around that.
Yeah. So like money was no object. And I'm not going to be the person paying you all this money, but let's say somebody in Hollywood saw one of your videos and they thought, we're going to give this guy £150 million to make a film. What kind of film would you make with that money?
It would more likely be a science fiction.
Yeah. So you'd make a science fiction film. Any particular kind of like idea?
Yeah. So I think it would be a movie like about somebody like from a community that like lacks need, but in the meantime, like they had this big dream and they didn't see how it was possible. But then they started making these connections, and when they started making the connections, it's like they already had some things, right? But then when they start making certain kind of connections, right, it's like the opportunities start becoming more possible. So like my overall view of the film would be that like your dream is never too big to be pursued. The small steps lead to big things.
Yeah.
This, Tim, I'm going to tell you, this reminds me of the filmmaker we talked to. What was his name? Wade, you should go. I never do this because this is crazy, but this reminded me of the filmmaker we talked to, and you should go watch that video we did because he's a brand new filmmaker connecting with all these people. And it's just a cool, small, artsy kind of world. You know,
Yeah.
he's over here in LA. I know you're in Chicago, but to make all these connections, do you remember his name, Tim? What was his name?
Well, this is where you're going to embarrass me because I can't remember.
Well, I don't remember his
I
name.
invited him on the show. He's
But
about
it's
5
okay.
episodes back.
You
So.
remember, so it's still important to you.
It's yeah, but it was a really cool story, but very similar. Just writing the stories.
Well, he was a science fiction author who then started to make. He pitched people to make films.
And that's
got
what
like half-hour sort of show thing, so he's still not in the 150 million people, million pound or dollar money.
yeah, he started pitching people and getting help, and that's kind of how he got people to help fund his project. So that whole thing. So where are you in your projects, and where are you hoping to go?
So right now, currently, I'm making short films, but actually, I'm looking to become more of a documentarian. Like, I love documentaries, and like the funny thing about that was like, normally growing up, I didn't watch many documentaries, but when I went to film school, we took this class, and we had to be about tipping the workers, and they talked about like the importance of tipping and things like that. But I fell in love with it because I'm like, you know what? I've made narrative films and I've worked with actors, and I like that bunny to tell real stories, and you get to really meet with real people, and it's like, it's just kind of interesting to kind of take something real and just, you know, turn it into a visible story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was Jonathan Yanez. Was the name of that guy, by the way.
Yeah. So basically, I'm looking to grow more toward being like, you know, making bigger documentaries. Like currently, I'm working on a pro wrestling documentary.
Oh, okay. So that's where the wrestling side came in.
Oh, okay. Okay. Tell us about that. What are you doing with that?
So basically, I started training for pro wrestling like 2 years ago. I was going to make a documentary. That's exactly how I got into it. And the guy, his name is Steve Boggs. He's very well known in the industry. He knew that I wrestled in high school. So when I got there to work on the documentary, he was like, when you gonna start training? So I just started training like the next week.
Oh, that's
so. Are you the only person in the world who has done wrestling, filmmaking, and been a funeral home director?
Well, so I don't know, because like I know in the pro wrestling business, right? They had Paul Bearer, and he was actual Mortician, and he was in the pro wrestling business as a manager. But as far as filmmaking, I feel like all of us are filmmakers nowadays. You know, I mean, just some people get paid a little better for it, but I mean, on the flip side, I feel like nowadays everybody is a cinematographer, everybody is an actor, like, because we all have the one resource, right? We got the phones, laptops, cameras, and it's like, you know, everybody's just being able to be creative now, you know? So I think all of us are filmmakers in our own right.
Absolutely. Who inspires you in all these industries? Who's your biggest inspiration?
My biggest inspiration, and like I said, from childhood, I would say Walt Disney and Spike Lee. And fascinated with Walt Disney's story, right? It's like, he was from Chicago too. I mean, he was born in Chicago, but he spent a lot of time in Missouri. And growing up, like, you know, he had a lot of good opportunities too, but he chose to choose his own path, you know? And, you know, kind of dipping into his story a little bit. Now, I was born in Chicago, and my wife is from Missouri. I've been spending a lot of time out there, so like I don't know, I kind of feel like a really strong connection with his story.
Okay, so are you cheering for the Chiefs, or are you guys Chiefs fans? What's going on with this football thing?
Well, me, honestly, I'm more of a basketball guy than football. Like I don't really follow football too much, you know.
Okay, so Chicago Bulls or no?
I'm a LeBron fan, to be honest. So.
I'm British, so this means nothing to me.
We're talking Tim is soccer / what they call football.
Well, football in the UK.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the whole funeral home mortician, because mortician's kind of a US expression. We would say funeral home director or undertaker in the UK.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
How, like, it must be a bit, how, if somebody was watching this who was like a teenager, what kind of things would you think would make them a good funeral home directing would be a good career for them? Are there attributes that somebody who is like an undertaker, like it helps? I mean, I presume that you have to have a certain tolerance of dead bodies and things, but I presume you could work apart from that if you wanted to. Like, what sort of attributes would a teenager you would say you'd make a good undertaker?
I think to be honest, like if you're a person that know how to really talk to people, you know how to have empathy, but also you have just genuine compassion. I think that alone would make a person a good funeral director, because again, that's not, it's not like even though it is a business, I mean, it's like, it's its own special type, right? Like, because like they're like, a person can go to McDonald's or go to a restaurant and mess up an order. And, some people would get mad and upset, but, most times a person would be like, no really big deal. But being in that business and something go wrong, oh man, it's like, so to me, if you're a person that has integrity and you really like, value talking to people and just being able to listen to people's life story. And to me, like, you look at like a funeral director, to me, it's like, you look at it like being an event planner, right? Somebody maybe like planning a big event. So like a funeral is kind of like somebody getting ready to say goodbye, celebrate their loved one life. So you want everything to go right. So you do the best that you can to make sure that it goes right. And I think that if you're a person that like an event planner and you just really like to help people and you know how to comfort people, I think that person would make an awesome funeral director.
We have so much to talk about because you have so many different career paths here, but let's go back to filmmaking. What made you decide to go actually to film school and get training?
Oh, that's a good question. So what happened was when I went to school to be a funeral director, like, I don't know how it is in the UK, but over here in America, like oh man, to whatever you want to do, they just make it kind of tough for you. So I went to school to be a funeral director, but in the meantime, we had like these two exams, like there are two exams. So basically they have arts, which is the funeral director side, and they have science, which is like the embalming and the cremation. So basically I was having a bit of time, like I made it through school, but I had these exams, these exit exams I was trying to pass. I'm like, you know what? If I don't pass these exit exams, I got to do something. Like, so like, I'm like, what am I going to do? So I'm like, well, maybe I'll take up plumbing, because my grandfather, he was a master plumber, and my uncle out in Las Vegas, he owns a plumbing company. So I'm like, maybe I'll try this out. So I went and flew out there and worked with my uncle. I'm like, look, I know the family is good at this, but this is just not, it's just not my thing. So I'm like, if I'm going to go do anything else, I'm going to do what I enjoy. So then I'm like, maybe I'll go work with animals, because I love animals too. And I went to the animal hospital and I'm like, I don't think I can handle this. So I'm like, why not go to film school? So I went to film school, and I kid you not, right when I went to film school, I passed one of the exams. It's like people were telling me, like, how you going to juggle two things at once? But like, I just trusted God and did it in good faith that it would work out. And as soon as I went to film school, I went to take my arts and I passed it. And then after I graduated film school, I went back and finished my science, and then I passed it.
Wow.
So was it a case you thought that one of them you would fail, so you would just do the other one, and actually you passed both of them? So it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but it was really funny, because like some people look at me and like, finish one thing first, but like I knew deep in my heart, like, no, it's like, I don't know. I kind of look at it like, I don't know, like I feel like some things are just like a chain reaction. Like, I think God has a time for everything. And I'm glad that I didn't let that one thing stop me from going forward, because I'm like, look, being in the funeral business, right, you see everyday time doesn't wait for anybody. Anybody could leave here just like that. So it's like, I've always been a person that like to live with purpose and intention, and I enjoy, like, because again, there were times when I first came in the funeral business, I started out as a volunteer. A filmmaker, as a child, I wrote I wrote my own stories. I made my own character. So I'm like, if I wasn't getting paid for it, these are the things I would be doing anyway. So why not just get a job doing what you enjoy, you know?
Yeah.
We have 2 more questions to ask you before we go. But my last question, Tim, is going to be, you're a dreamer and you are full of purpose. So I kind of want to ask you, if there's a child out there listening, say they're in high school, give us some inspirational words that you would say to that high schooler that's kind of like, I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. I don't know. Or the child who's like, I don't know what I'm doing. What is an inspirational or purposeful message that you might have for them?
Well, my thing will first always be to analyze yourself. Like, what do I really enjoy doing? You know, and I think that, you know, once a person figure that out, it helps you to learn more about, because even like with living and making money and things, right? I think that more people should, this is just my opinion, but I feel like me, like, you know, when God blessed me to become a parent and I would help my children, I would say this: find something that you really enjoy doing. Because if you enjoy doing it, you know, to me, I think that it's much more fun. Like, you would never work a day in your life if you do what you love, you know? And if you can ask yourself, if I can do whatever I want to make money doing it, what would it be? And if you find that thing, then you can pursue it and try it out, because you never know. One thing leads to another, just like with pro wrestling, right? We took a chance and tried it out. Next thing you know, I've got a chance to work shows with people that I watched on TV, you know? So you never know. Sometimes when the dream seems like it's impossible, it's reachable. You just have to keep working toward it until you can get it on your level. You know, I look at it like, if you're a child, right? And you go somewhere, you're trying to reach something too high on the shelf, you know, just walk up the ladder, you know, put it in reach, you know, nothing is impossible. Just put it in reach, however you can do it.
Mm.
Okay. I presume this is a question that Christelle was saying I was going to ask. How can people find out about you? So on all the different areas. So let's say somebody who wants to use you as a musician, somebody who wants you as a filmmaker, and somebody's interested in talking about wrestling.
So if they want to know anything about me, they actually can reach out on my Facebook page. Also, you know, by the grace of God, there's a lot of interviews with me on Facebook if you just type up Wade Simmons Filmmaker. I've done a lot of interviews over the years, so I'm grateful to everybody, even yourself and God, for, you know, these opportunities. But I don't know, I'm just having fun, and just, you know, I'm making the most of time and not letting time make the most of me, you know. So I just, you know, just believe if you got a dream, just give it a shot, you know. Nothing is impossible. You just got to keep working to it, you know.
Awesome. This has been. Thank you for being with us. We're going to hang up, get going, and we'll have some feedback. I'm not sure why, but we're going to.
All right. Well, thanks, Tim. And I thank you too, Miss Chris, because you all were nice enough to allow me on your platform, and I appreciate that, and it means a lot. And I'm gonna keep in contact with you too, by the way. So thank you for having me.
Oh yeah. Right.
Awesome.
And,
bye, everyone. Thank you for your time.
This is what God requires.